peer pressure, right? So I think that people look at peer pressure as just like, when people are young, high school, middle school. But I want to get to that. But I actually want to talk about peer pressure even in our age, like during the 20s, even the 30s, even like some, when you start to get older, you just realize that, people who are old, like they're just older kids. Like you're not really adults. Like you act like a 30-year-old child.
Bro, that was a realization I had when I was probably like 19. Was just like, man, like, cause you always, especially as a kid, you always like look up to your parents and like adults. It's like, oh man, they got their stuff together and like whatever. And then you get older and you're like, we're all just a bunch of kids. Bro, everyone's got their own stuff. Everyone has their problem. You know what I mean? Like everyone's just trying to do the best that they can.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, but like people our age, like just I think not having, I think we mentioned this maybe like first episode or second episode, but I kind of want to dive deeper into, like creating your own identity, right? And so I think a lot of times, when you're in college, when you're in high school, and then even when you get older, you don't really separate yourself from the pack. It's just like, oh no, they're doing that, I'm going to do it too. And so that leads to, being in relationships you shouldn't be in, talking to certain people you shouldn't talk to, and just doing it because everyone else is, right? And so there's this social pressure of like, hey, you need to drink, so I'm going to drink. You need to, you're a smoker, I need to smoke. All this kind of stuff that kind of forces you to be somebody that you're not really. But since everyone else is doing it, and I just want to fit in, I'm just going to do it.
Well, I think it's a very natural urge, especially as people, to want to, like, blend in, be accepted by the group, be liked by people. I think those are all very, like, healthy things. But I think it's like once you start doing things that you wouldn't normally do on your own to try to, like, please other people, I think that's when it becomes a problem. And I think another problem that I think leads into that kind of behavior is that people can't be alone. And so I think for me especially, man, I spent a lot of time alone just because, like, I had a certain set of beliefs and values that I was trying to hold to for myself, and like a lot of people just weren't really down for that, and it can be hard to go solo. I remember I went to an action sports camp in Pennsylvania, like Amish country, middle of nowhere. But it was like this, gorgeous like skate parks everywhere, pools everywhere. It's like this big, like everyone's in cabins and all this stuff. Yeah. And I was in a cab, like my cabin was full of hoodlums, bro. Like these kids were doing all the drugs, like it was crazy. So I remember for me, like I wanted to make friends. I was there for like a week or something. So like you want to hang out with people. But in my heart, man, I was just like, dude, I can't be around these people. So I literally would just like skate by myself. I would do a lot of things by myself until I eventually met the people that I wanted to be around. But I think it takes that time to be able to like have your, what's the word? Like the flag in the sand of like, this is what.
This is where I draw the line.
Yeah, this is where I'm at. This is what I stand for. And you're going to stand on that, even if that means standing alone.
Yeah, two corny things, right? Like, stand for something or stand for nothing at all is like kind of that thought. And secondly, this is about to sound really corny on the surface, but I'm going to go deep into it. Okay. You have to love yourself, right? And I think, people say that nowadays as a way of, whoa, I'm really high in the headphones. People say that nowadays of like, you have to love yourself, but there's no like guideline to it, right? It's just like accept everything that comes with you. No, I think there is, and we'll get to peer pressure. We'll go back to that, but I think that there is a line to where it's like I think you do have to accept and love who you are, but I think sometimes especially nowadays we say that in a way of like, yeah, love who you are and like stay this person, right? So it's like everything you are is acceptable, right? So like your bad time management, you always, getting in these depressing spells, you not liking your body because you may be overweight. No, just love yourself and everything will be okay. Which I think two things can be true at the same time. I think you need to love yourself, but also realize the places that you need to improve and then things that are just not healthy for you. Like, for example, like I think I'm really, because I can definitely speak for this in my life because there's been times I've been like, 50 pounds overweight than I am now. And so it's like, I did had to work through like, loving myself in that way and be like, okay, cool. I still love myself, but I still want to be different. I want to be more healthy. I want to be more fit so I can feel, call back to the confidence episode. Yeah. But I think there definitely needs to be a thing where it's like, yes, I love myself and, I love who I am. I'm comfortable in my skin, but also I'm not going to negate all these things that I think I should, do better at and be, just be better. And so some, again, nowadays it's just like, love yourself, love who you are. Don't change anything about you. So I say two things. I say love who you are, but also be hyper aware of who you are. So it's like, I'm loving who I am, but I'm like learning who I am and seeing the things that aren't necessarily good character. Right. Like those things need to change.
Oh, for sure. Well, I think it's like, you do like a pros and cons list like about yourself, like strengths and weaknesses.
That's
and
your thing. Yeah.
No, I'm really big about that because I think it's just it's a call for self-awareness. And so I think if you realize like, all right, I'm good at these things, I'm not good at these things, like I'm vulnerable in these areas, and that way you're able to work on them. I feel like that's really important to be able to have an understanding of what you're good at, what you're not good at. And that way, like, as you're going throughout life, you have this awareness of like what, things you tend to fall for, what things you are really good at. And that way I think it'll be a lot easier if you have that like awareness.
Yeah, and I think some people kind of go through their life of just I'll go back to the peer pressure thing because I don't want people to be like, you guys didn't.
Yeah, we gotta get into it.
Because I was about to go into it.
But the thing is about a lot of these topics is that they're correlated.
Yes,
you know what I mean. And that's why like we like to pick a topic, but then it's like, oh, we could go so many different directions with it because like the peer pressure thing hints to other deeper things.
So many things
that need to be touched on. So it's almost like. That's kind of like a
symptom. We have to break away.
Yeah, it's a symptom to something deeper,
Yeah, so I think, maybe even like a part of that is kind of like loving yourself. And there's like, because I think, something that we do is like we ask ourselves really good questions, but like each other, but while we're alone, we also ask really good questions. And so I think that's something that you need to figure out in your life as well. Like kind of talking to the audience of like, if you find yourself being easily manipulated or easily just following the pack, I would ask yourself, like, start with the question, like, why? Why do I have a tendency to just like be that, I think there are natural leaders. And so like, that's something that's kind of about us that we're naturally want to lead and stuff like that. But I think that you need to sometimes stop yourself and feel like, okay, why am I always just going with what everyone else is doing? Why do I not really think for myself? And I think those little questions, you'll start to build on top of each other. Like, okay, why do I do that? And then you'll figure out, it's like, oh, I do that because I don't like being lonely. Okay, why don't I feel like being lonely, right? And so it's like you start just going through these things, and then one question can lead to 10 questions, and then once you get into it, you're like, oh, at the end of it, I'm just insecure about being alone.
Yeah.
No,
for sure. Well, I think that's the part too about like, and that's why I am thankful for the route that I went, where like I went through like a lone wolf phase for a long time and stuff like that, like not typically social, because I feel like I can be social and stuff like that, but I think my natural instinct is want like just to keep to myself, do my own thing, kind of have like my own little mission. I got my own little people. I stay in my own little box. But I think like it's really important to be able to not only be able to be alone for a certain period of time. I don't think you should stay there, but I think you need to be in a place where you can if you need to be. You know what I mean? If like the surroundings that you're in are unhealthy, if the people that you're with are not, what they should be, then you need to be able in a place where like, all right, I'm going to stand for what I believe in until I find the people that can reinforce what I'm trying to do.
And this is probably like a through line of what I say. I say this all the time. Like I hear myself saying this. There's seasons of life. Well, I literally said that a lot. There's seasons of life where, you need to just draw back. Because I think I've been that before. Because I was a person where, for instance, in high school, like I would hang out with literally anyone. Like I was cool with everyone. Like there was no, like I wasn't just like with these people or with these people. Like I was genuinely cool with everyone. But there were some people that I knew weren't good for me. And so I just didn't hang out with them. And then there was other seasons, really mainly my, in 12th grade. And because I was over high school at that point. But I kind of drew back a lot. Like I didn't really hang out with anybody. I didn't really talk to that many people. But in that year, like I grew a lot. Like I really learned what I liked, what I wanted to do and all that kind of stuff. And I think, there are seasons where you just need to step back and be like, what does Amir like? What do I like? What am I about, right? Like, without anybody else, like without anybody else's opinion, because that's, what social media has created is a lot of opinions. And then you don't have your own. You're just kind of formulating what's out there. And so I think that, when you draw back, you ask yourself like, hey, like, do I really think that about this topic? Do I really think that about that topic? Right. And if anything, that'll make you harder about what you really believe. Oh, like, you'll be like in the sand, like, no, this is my line. I believe this, and that's okay.
Well, no, 100%. And I think it takes that reflection and that inner work to be able to understand, like, your strengths, your weaknesses, what you like, what you don't like. And like you said, what are you willing to, like, stand on? I think is really important as well. Because I think for me, like, I remember I caught that habit in myself of, like, looking to see what other people thought about stuff versus, like, my own opinion. It's like when new music drops, for example. Like, I watch a lot of these, like, reaction videos and stuff. So if everyone likes the music or the album or whatever, like, I'll like it more. But then if I see a review that's like, oh, I thought that was trash or it's just okay. like I'll notice my own opinion of it change, and not because it was my own opinion of it, but it was like an outside influence that was commenting that affected like my own psyche of what I thought. And so it's really easy to get influenced, man, for sure. I think especially if you like look up to certain people, or if your friends think a certain way and you think differently, it's really easy to go with the crowd.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's okay to like change your mind and stuff like that. Like I think some people want you to stay so hard on one idea that you can never like go outside of that. So for instance, if I think of this, you know, maybe like 1 year, and then the next year you're like, you know, I don't really agree with that thought anymore. Or like, but no, I do think you have to be in a place of, you know, kind of formulating your own ideas. Like you said, like, okay, hey, I like this song, but everyone else doesn't. Who cares, right? But I think that goes into like even self-confidence, and that goes into, you know, asking yourself these little questions of like, you know, why am I letting people influence me so bad? And it may you may be frustrated one day of like dang, like I do let people influence me. Like why do I do that? You know? And I think with those little questions, you'll end up getting to an end where now you're way better than you were when you started, because you know why you react to things, right? And I think that's something that I'm good at, of like in my life, of when I react to something, I'm like, wait, why did I do that? And I'm like, oh, okay, I only did that because that's something I've seen in the past, or because, you know, I really feel like that about that person or that thing. It's like I don't, you know, fall back. I peep and fall back, right? Call to last episode. But you know, you see certain things and you're coming up with your own idea. And so I think this is how it should go, right? You see something, you have your own idea about it, and then you kind of see the general take about it, or what people taking, and then you kind of mesh those two together. It's like, oh, you know what? They had a good point about that, because I think it's good to be challenging your ideas.
Right. No, there's definitely a balance between like listening to what other people have to say too much over here, where it's like you don't have your own opinion, you're always going with what the crowd wants, and then you have like over here where it's like you're delusionally like in your own bubble, and you refuse to listen to other people and like not take criticism or you know, healthy correction, stuff like that. Because there was a point where I was like that, because I was in my own bubble, like I only cared about what I thought, I was only into like what I felt like was the right thing to do, and I think that could be a really unhealthy place as well. So it's kind of like that mixture of like listening to your own opinions, having your own opinions, and like being able to stand on them even if people disagree with you, but also being able to be corrected healthily and things like that.
Yeah, because I think that other side that you're talking about, it builds pride, right? And then that's good for no one, right? Because if you're prideful, then you can't see what's in front of you, because you're like, you're so hard on this thing that I don't care what authority or anyone says. And then that's another challenge with authority. And so it's like you have pride, and then I have this like weird challenge with authority, which a lot of people have nowadays. Like they're very, you know, want to challenge authority so much, and then like they can never be wrong on their idea. And then again, that's unhealthy as well, right? Because you feel like everything you say is right, and you know there's no such thing as subjective truth and all that kind of stuff. It's only about, you know, what I believe, and what they say is wrong, not even wanting to hear them out. Now there can be somebody that I completely disagree with, and I can hear them out, and then because I'm so confident in what I believe, you know, I can be like, yo, good on you, you believe that, good, you know. But it's not going to affect me anyway. It's not going to make me mad, because it's like I know what I believe. And so I hear somebody out and just be respectful, and you know, so it's like, you know, it is those two, like you listen to people too much, but then you don't listen to people at all, and you're prideful, and you're just like, oh, like I know what's
bubble,
right.
And that gets really unhealthy.
Yeah, you know, you honestly start to be like a psychopath, right?
Yeah,
you know,
100%. I've seen that as well.
Yeah, you know, people who are just like so gung ho on what they believe that it's like you can't even get them to like see the other side, even if you don't agree with the other side. If you can see the other side, and seeing the other side, which is good about this, because seeing the other side may make you better, may come up with better points. It's like, oh, wait, it's like I knew I didn't like that before, but now I really know I don't like that. You know, so that may end up helping you in the long run to look at a different perspective of something. You know, especially like you know, something like religion or something like that. You know, you have your own beliefs about this, and you see other people's stuff, and you're like, oh, I understand why I believe what I believe. You know, like I see the track to that. Or even in politics, it's like, oh, I get why I believe this, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, those people may be a little lost. And hey, maybe you're the person that's lost, right?
Well, and I think like for me, especially with like every major like holding that I have in my life, whether it's like religion or values or whatever, it's like you have to have the courage to question your own belief systems. And I think if you're not willing to have a conversation about why you may be wrong about something, or a different perspective you haven't thought of, then you're just like in a bubble, frankly. Like if you have those conversations, if you always think you're right all the time, it's like you have to be willing to challenge yourself and be wrong. And so, but that, like you said, but then once you're able to go through that trial and you come out on the other side and you still think the same thing, I think that way you can really stand on that because, like, all right, I went through the trial, I did my own research, and I really believe what I believe.
I'll even say that in, like, Christianity. Like, I don't think God wants us to, like, passively just, like
blindly believe you.
Yeah,
like,
blindly.
Believe the church or whatever.
Right, and of course, faith without works is dead, and, that's not actually the verse that I want to say at all, so I don't know why I say that. But the truth is, like, faith is truly believing in something that you haven't seen. I'm laughing because I said that verse. Having that faith and kind of doing your own research of like, okay, like, why do I believe in this God, or why do I, I was like, oh, I understand because I've read the Bible, I've came up with stuff, I've looked at other literature and stuff like that to understand what I believe. Right. Because I think, what people tend to do is just like, oh yeah, I believe that, and like that's good enough. It's just the belief.
Or they believe it because their parents believe it, or like their friends believe it, and that's a really big thing as well. Because I think for me, like, what really reinforced, like my belief is the going through the apologetics classes and watching debates online and being able to hear people with different perspectives. Like, people who I think are legitimately very smart, like, disagree with each other, and being able to have that open conversation about what you're actually talking about to see if you really believe what you believe at the end of the day.
Yeah, that'll test you, man. Like, looking at the other side of some things, about, wait, oh shoot, like, dang, that's a good point. You know what I mean? But then, like, the other guy says something else, like, oh, that's right. That's the right way, and that's what I believe. But I don't think you should blindly, believe anything. I think all things you should test things, right? Yeah. You should test it in a way of, seeking truth, and I think that's a big thing with like my personality type is like, it may seem like with like friends and stuff like that I'm like sometimes overly combative when I'm trying to say something, but it's like for me it's just like I just want truth out of this thing. Like what is like, let's extrapolate the truth out of it, other than just like kind of just disagreeing just to disagree. I was like, no, it's like, is this thing true? Right, it's like, are we seeking truth in this thing? And to me, if you know me, it could be the smallest thing.
Well, no, because I mean, truth is worth fighting for. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think even for me, like, I remember an old memory I had where I went to like my local community college to knock out my associate's degree or whatever, and I was in a communications class, and I remember this teacher just started talking like crazy about this, like, the way the world works and politics and stuff. And so I'm like this 19-year-old kid, and I'm like in a room full of people. But the way I felt about it is because I was so convicted about because I did my own research about these topics, and I really believe what I believe so strongly, that I felt like everyone around me, if I didn't say something that was from a different point of view, that they were going to blindly believe the authority figure that was telling them something that may not even be true. So I raised my hand, and we started getting into it about stuff, and that led to a whole different, like, now thankfully I never got in trouble or whatever. But it was like a multi-class thing where, like, he would say something, and I'm like,
nah.
Yeah, I gotta say something about that.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny how, like, a lot of times you need to be the person to step up. And I think a lot of ways my, like, leadership style personality came from the fact of I'm looking around and nobody else is willing to say something. So I'm going to say something. And then after I say something, I had so many people come up to me after that class and be like, man, I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't want to say anything.
Right.
Yeah, so it is surprising, even if it feels like you're alone when you're stepping out like that. Truth is, there's a lot of people who probably feel the same way.
Not only that, I think you have to, in order to get to that point, you have to be okay with being wrong, right? So, for instance, like, if you hold this idea, if you hold this, like, political idea, because I think that's better than religion, because you can get in so many places with that. But, like, if you hold this political idea and you hear the other side and then you kind of say a point, because this has happened to me. Like, I've been talking to a friend or something like that, and I'll say something and they'll be like, no, actually look at it this way. I didn't necessarily believe what they were saying, but it made me want to argue my point in a different way so they can explain it better. Right. So it's not necessarily I was wrong, but it was the way I was explaining it that kind of made them like, no, like, and I was like, no, that's not what I meant. Like, here's what I mean. And I was able to really like go through what I think and how I think about it, rather just like, and at the end of that, if I was wrong, I'd be like, hey man, yeah, I was wrong. Yeah.
Well, no, and I think, like, especially in 2021, I think we've lost the ability to, like, I think people immediately interpret disagreeing with people as like me versus you, I'm trying to embarrass you, I'm trying to make you feel bad, versus like having a healthy discussion about the truth about something you're actually trying to discuss. And I think that's, like with your personality especially, I've noticed that, like, even when we've been out, you're kind of like playfully disagreeing with people.
Yeah.
Not to like troll, but like, you want to get down to whatever you're talking about.
Yeah.
And people will interpret that like, whoa, like you attacking me. And it's like, I think we got to a weird place in society now where we can't even like disagree with each other in a healthy way, because people immediately interpret disagreement as, or like a healthy challenge as like an attack on your personality.
You know, it's like you're not gonna be around me and be challenged and not be challenged around your ideas. And I think that's why the people who are around me respect me, because like I will challenge your ideas, I will challenge my ideas. Like there's been stuff that I've said, like when we're just like talking on the phone or something like that, I'm like, actually I'm wrong. like I stepped back, I was like, and like I said it, I was like, even earlier today I said something in the car and I was like, wait, no, I was like, no, that's wrong. you know, and, you know, that's okay to be wrong, but I think like we shouldn't lose that that spirit of disagreement. Like it's okay to disagree, you know, just be respectful, right?
Well, it's okay to be wrong as well, because I think a lot of the reasons why people don't step out and actually like stand on something they believe or whatever is because they're afraid to be wrong, they're afraid to be embarrassed. They feel like if they're wrong, their pride's gonna get hit, it's gonna be this disaster type of thing. And like, and in reality, man, like, you know, to me it's like if you're not willing to stand up for what you really believe in, like, do you really believe in it?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like, I don't need a bunch of like wishy-washy people who are just kind of like, they feel one way, but they can be convinced if enough people think another way. Easily. It's like I need people who are gonna stand on what they believe in and really ride that out.
Yeah, and but even like what we talked about, all of that kind of goes into the peer pressure thing. Like literally, like because like, we said that a moment ago of like I say a moment ago, it was like 15 minutes ago. We said that you know, it's kind of like when people are like, oh yeah, that happened the other day. That happened to me. Quick little side story. I was at the barber and he's like cutting my head and he was like, yo, when's the last time you've been to the gym? This was like 2 years ago. He's like, when's the last time you've been to the gym? Because like, I go to this gym, whatever. And I was like, oh, it was a minute. It was like the other day. He was like, the other day? You mean like the other month? And I was like, no, it was like 3 months ago. It's funny how we do that, like just the other day, a moment ago. Anyway, that all goes to when we were talking about a moment ago about all the, you know, the peer pressure, right? You know, being, you know, getting better at the things that you believe, understanding what you believe. And not only that, again, I want to talk about, you know, the loving yourself thing a little bit more because I know, which I said, like, yeah, you need to love yourself, but I think that you just have to have the awareness. I don't know if I said that, but I did want to say that again. Just being aware of who you are, loving yourself, but be willing to change. And I think that's kind of encapsulates what we all just said right there. Just like having the willingness to change, having the willingness to hear other sides, right? Yeah. Because I think that's what starts. You need to come out of yourself a little bit, you know, back up, say, hey, that's right, that's wrong, whatever. Be good on what you believe by yourself. Right. So when you're with other people and hearing other people's idea, you're able to, you know, nail that out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, because to me, like, that's so annoying because the whole, like, love yourself, you're perfect the way you are. It's like, no, you're probably not.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's such an arrogant statement to me, to be honest. And, like, I really get seriously annoyed when people say that. Because it's like the level of entitlement and pride that comes with that statement of like, crazy. There's nothing that you can work on. You're exactly perfect in every single category. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, dude.
It's like, it's nothing. It's like, yo, buddy, you're 150 pounds overweight.
Well, it's just delusional. It's like, you gotta be, you know, at that point, it's like you're not being honest with yourself, man. And you're not actually gonna get better if you're not honest with yourself. Like, I'm constantly, and maybe like it's unhealthy, but it's like I'm constantly evaluating my own performances in different areas. Like, all right, like, you know, my health. Am I happy with this? Am I really doing my best? And that's even a whole different topic that might be for another show about, are you really doing your best? You know, so it's like with your health, like with your financial status, like with your friendships, all this other stuff. Like, are you really putting in that full effort? And then if you're not, why are you not doing that? Are you not inspired enough? Do you not actually care about it as much as you thought you did? You know, just having these reflections of just sitting down and just journaling some stuff out, man. Put on some lo-fi, think about these things, break down these categories of your life. You know, I break it down like health, wealth, love, happiness. You know, and just breaking all that stuff down and going from there.
Well, no, I think that kind of goes into the self-doubt thing, right? You know, because that was kind of like a topic that we brought up is, you know, you'll never, I think, really be happy about anything you do if you constantly doubt yourself, because there's always be this like airy feeling of like doubting yourself. So you're never going to feel confident at your job. You're never going to feel confident with your friends. You're never going to feel confident about anything if you just constantly doubt yourself. So you need to come to a place, like you said, like now that I'll put on some lo-fi like we always do, and, you know, write down these areas of your life and actually like write it down or type it in your computer and just like see like where I think you do two things. Write out where you currently are and where you like want to be, because then in the middle you'll kind of find out like how to get there and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and even out on top of that, so it's like you have where you are, you have where you want to be, and then what do you think is stopping you from getting there?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because I think all of us have like these goals and stuff like that in these different categories of our lives, whether we like really write it down or we've got like a rough idea of what that is. But I think a lot of people don't actually have like, one, a roadmap of how you're going to get from A to B. But then also, if that's what you claim you really want, then why haven't you done it yet? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I gotta be like honest and open about like myself too, right? Like because there's times where, you know, I draw back on stuff that I'm naturally gifted at. Let's say creativity, right? Like I like being creative and stuff like that. But I'll draw back on it because like let's say I've compared my creativity to somebody else or something like that. And so I deem what I have as insignificant. And so I kind of said this in my Instagram story like the other day of just talking about making sure you're grateful about, you know, the things that you do have, the gifts that you